A hidden truth, confessing after 20 years. Hi Reddit, I'm not sure how to start this, but I need to confess something that has been haunting me for the past 20 years. I hope that sharing this here might bring me some semblance of peace. My name is Jack, and I'm 45 years old. 2 decades ago, I was involved in a car accident that killed a young woman. Her name was Emily, and she was just 19 at the time. To this day, I can't forgive myself for what happened. I was 25 back then, a different person in many ways. I had just landed a great job and was celebrating with friends. We drank way too much, and despite knowing better, I decided to drive home. It was a terrible decision, one that I regret more than anything else. It was late at night, and the roads were mostly empty. I was speeding, feeling invincible with alcohol coursing through my veins. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Emily's car appeared. I tried to swerve, but it was too late. The impact was horrific. Her car spun out of control and crashed into a tree. I remember the sound of metal crunching and glass shattering, and then everything went silent. I was in shock, but I managed to get out of my car and stumbled over to hers. I could see her slumped over the wheel, blood everywhere. I panicked and fled the scene, driven by fear and cowardice. I didn't call for help, I didn't do anything a decent human being should have done. I just left her there to die. The next day, the accident was all over the news. The police were looking for the driver of the hit and run, but they never found me. I don't know how I managed to escape detection. My car was damaged, but I paid a shady mechanic to fix it without asking questions. No one ever suspected me. Emily's family was devastated. I read about them in the papers, saw their pleas for information, and it broke my heart. I wanted to turn myself in, but I was too scared. The fear of going to prison, of ruining my life, kept me silent. I convinced myself that I would eventually come forward, but days turned into months, and months turned into years. For 20 years, I've lived with this guilt, this heavy burden that never goes away. I've tried to atone for my sin in small ways, donating to charities, volunteering, trying to be a better person. But nothing has ever erased the guilt. A few months ago, I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Carter. I finally opened up about what happened that night. Dr. Carter has been encouraging me to come clean, to find a way to seek forgiveness and make amends. It's taken me a long time to gather the courage, but I know that I need to do this. Emily's parents, if you're out there, I'm so deeply sorry for what I did. I can't imagine the pain I've caused you. I'm ready to face the consequences, whatever they may be. I'm going to turn myself into the authorities and tell them everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope that by finally telling the truth, I can bring some closure to Emily's family and maybe find a little peace for myself. Thank you for listening, Reddit. I'll keep you updated on what happens next. Update. Hi Reddit, it's Jack again. I wanted to give you an update on what's happened since my confession. The response to my post was overwhelming. I didn't expect so many people to care, and your words of support and encouragement have meant a lot to me. Here's what's happened in the past few weeks. After posting my confession, I contacted the local police department and arranged to meet with a detective. I was incredibly nervous, but I knew this was the right thing to do. When I walked into the station, I felt like my legs were made of lead. Detective Anderson was assigned to my case. He listened as I recounted everything, from the night of the accident to the years of guilt that followed. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also a relief to finally tell the truth. Detective Anderson was professional but stern. He explained that they would need to investigate my claims and that I should prepare for possible charges. I knew this was coming, and I accepted it. They took my statement and said they would be in touch. Leaving the station, I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. I had finally done what I should have done 20 years ago. Now, I had to face the consequences. A few days later, I received a call from Detective Anderson. They had reopened the case and were looking into the details of the accident. I was asked to come in for further questioning and to provide any additional information I could remember. I did my best to cooperate fully. In the meantime, I reached out to Emily's parents through a letter. I didn't know if they would want to hear from me, but I felt I owed them an explanation and an apology. I wrote about what happened that night, how I've lived with the guilt, and how sorry I am for their loss. I didn't expect forgiveness, but I wanted them to know the truth. A week later, I received a response. It was from Emily's mother, Mrs. Thompson. Her letter was both heartbreaking and understanding. She told me about Emily, what a bright and loving person she was, and how much they missed her every day. She said that while my actions had caused them immense pain, she appreciated my honesty in coming forward. She didn't know if she could ever forgive me, but she hoped I would use this opportunity to make better choices and live a more honest life. Her words brought me to tears. I didn't deserve her kindness, but it gave me a glimmer of hope. I knew I had to make things right, as much as I could. The investigation continued, and eventually, I was charged with vehicular manslaughter and leaving the scene of an accident. I was arrested and spent a night in jail before being released on bail. The court proceedings are set to begin soon, and I'm working with a lawyer to navigate the legal process. I've also continued my therapy sessions with Dr. Carter. She's been a tremendous support, helping me manage my anxiety and guilt. We're focusing on how I can atone for my past actions and live a more purposeful life moving forward. The legal process is daunting, and I know there's a strong chance I'll be facing prison time. I'm prepared for that. I've come to terms with the fact that I need to pay for what I did. It's the only way I can truly take responsibility for my actions and maybe find some measure of redemption. In the midst of all this, I've also reconnected with my estranged sister, Laura. We hadn't spoken in years due to various family issues, but she reached out after reading my confession. She offered her support and forgiveness, which has been incredibly healing for both of us. We've been spending time together and rebuilding our relationship. I've also started attending meetings for a local support group for people dealing with guilt and remorse over past actions. Sharing my story and hearing others has been cathartic. It's helped me understand that while I can't change the past, I can take steps to make amends and live a more positive life moving forward. Emily's mother, Mrs. Thompson, reached out to me again. She asked if I would be willing to meet with her and Emily's father, Mr. Thompson. They wanted to hear more about that night and how I've been dealing with it since. I was terrified, but I agreed. I owed them that much. The meeting was one of the hardest things I've ever done. We met at a small cafe. When I walked in and saw them, I felt a wave of guilt and shame. But they were surprisingly kind. They asked me to tell them everything, and I did. I told them about my panic, my guilt, and my eventual decision to come forward. Mr. Thompson was more reserved, clearly still in pain, but he listened. Mrs. Thompson told me more about Emily, her dreams, her friends, how much they loved her. It was heart-wrenching. They asked why I hadn't come forward sooner, and I could only tell them the truth, that I was a coward, afraid of the consequences. At the end of our meeting, Mrs. Thompson said something that I will never forget. She told me that while they could never forgive me for taking their daughter away, they could appreciate my effort to make things right. They wished me luck in finding my way to a better path. Leaving that meeting, I felt an overwhelming mix of emotions. Guilt, shame, but also a sense of relief. I had faced the people I had wronged the most, and while I knew I could never undo the damage I had done, I had taken a step toward making amends. The legal process has been progressing. My lawyer has been preparing me for the trial. We've discussed possible outcomes, and while I'm hoping for leniency, I'm prepared for the worst. Dr. Carter has been helping me stay grounded, reminding me that this process is part of my journey toward redemption. I've also been spending more time with my sister, Laura. She's been incredibly supportive, and we've been working on mending our relationship. We've talked a lot about our childhood, our parents, and how we drifted apart. It feels like we're starting to heal old wounds. As the trial date approaches, my anxiety has been increasing. I've been leaning heavily on my support group and Dr. Carter to help me manage.